rid of a Bengals wide receiver, but I actually do like it for both sides. I think obviously if you're the Raiders, you're trying to give Fernando Mendoza, who we assume is going to be the #1 overall pick, as many weapons as possible. Already, it's pretty nice with Ashton Genty and Brock Bowers in that offense, but they really are a little thin at wide receiver. So I do think bringing in someone like T. Higgins, who has been a 1B over the course of his career, I don't even consider him a secondary option in that offense. He is a legitimate #1 wide receiver. He just happens to be in the shadow of arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL in Jamar Chase. You put him in that offense with Clint Kubiak, we've seen what he was able to do with Jackson Smith and Jigba in terms of a league-leading target share. This is someone who could be heavily involved in that offense. And then if we want to look at it from a Cincinnati Bengals perspective, I kind of didn't like them bringing back T. Higgins last offseason. I thought that they were much better served, obviously signing Jamar Chase. You had to do that. But I kind of liked the idea of letting T. Higgins go, using the money that you were spending on him to address the defense. They ultimately didn't do it, and they had one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Maybe you right that wrong this offseason. You move on from T. Higgins, you get draft capital, you free up some money, and you use all of that to fix the defense. I think that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase should be able to hold down the fort offensively. You use all of that to fix the defense.
Tyler, I am glad you brought up the Bengals defense, because the only way they would trade T. Higgins to the Raiders is if Max Crosby was involved in that deal. We saw the Bengals work out that long-term deal with T. Higgins last year. It's a very team-friendly contract, so they would have to get some defensive players in return if they were going to make a deal like this. Joe Burrow loves throwing to Jamar Chase, loves throwing to T. Higgins, and the offense is the only reason they're able to stay in games. So they don't want to give up any weapons because they don't know what their defense is going to look like. But from the Raiders' point of view, if they were able to swing this deal, will be an absolute steal, because we already mentioned Fernando Mendoza. He is almost certainly going to be their starting quarterback. When you have a rookie, you want to make him as comfortable as possible. You mentioned, we already know they have the tight end in Brock Bowers. We know they have the running back in Ashton Genty. We know they have an up-and-coming receiver.
Let an expert your taxes. Pay only $150. No hidden fees. File with
up-and-coming receiver in Trey Tucker, who had a solid year in 2025, his third year in the league. So really what they need is kind of that #1 go-to receiver, make Trey Tucker that #2 guy, and Higgins would absolutely fit that bill. So if the Raiders can get a receiver in there, a very productive receiver, a Pro Bowl level receiver, that would help their offense a lot going into the upcoming season.
Let's see the AFC West. The Chiefs, whether it's now or later, they will at some point need a replacement for Travis Kelce. Tyler, how would you feel about Browns tight end David Njoku?
I would like it. I mean, he's already saying goodbye to the Cleveland Browns. Like, he is out of there. So I do think that this makes sense from a Kansas City perspective, because as you referenced, at some point they're going to be without Travis Kelce. And even if he does come back this year, they need a succession plan at tight end. But really, they need some explosion on offense. You watched the Kansas City Chiefs last year. They just looked like a tired team. I think that was the best way to describe them. No explosion, just tired from, I guess, all of these Super Bowl runs, but they need